Everyone remembers when they stepped away, but almost no one talks about what that decision actually did to the royal family. Because on the surface, it looked like a simple exit, a personal choice, a new beginning. But behind the scenes, it triggered something much bigger, something that didn't just create distance, but quietly changed the balance of the monarchy itself. Before we get into this, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story doesn't end here, and you don't want to miss what comes next. To understand why this decision mattered so much, you have to go back to how things looked before. At the time, the royal family was entering what many believed would be a new era. You had Prince William and Prince Harry, two brothers who, despite their differences, represented continuity. There was history there, shared experience, a sense that, no matter what, they would stand together when it mattered most. And then something shifted. When Meghan Markle entered the picture, everything changed, but not in the way most people expected. At first, it looked like evolution, a modern influence, a broader appeal, a sign that the monarchy could adapt to a changing world. For a moment, it even felt like the royal family had found a new kind of energy. But institutions like this don't change easily. They operate on structure, tradition, control. And when something disrupts that balance, even slightly, it creates pressure. At first, that pressure wasn't obvious. It didn't show up in public statements or official appearances. It showed up in smaller ways, subtle differences, shifts in tone, moments that felt slightly out of sync. And over time, those small shifts began to grow, because what was happening wasn't just personal, it was structural. You had one part of the royal family moving in a new direction, more open, more independent, less bound by traditional expectations, and another part trying to maintain stability, consistency, and control. Neither side was necessarily wrong, but they weren't aligned. And in a system built on alignment, that's a problem. Now, from the outside, it might seem like these tensions could have been managed, resolved, quietly, handled internally. But here's where things take a turn. Because instead of adjusting within the system, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle made a decision that no one could ignore. They stepped away. Not temporarily, not partially. They stepped outside the structure entirely. And in that moment, everything changed. Because this wasn't just a family decision, it was an institutional shock. For the royal family, the idea of members stepping back at that level, it disrupted the very foundation of how things are supposed to work. Suddenly, the image of unity became harder to maintain. The balance shifted, and the pressure didn't disappear. It moved. It moved onto those who remained. Prince William, King Charles III, figures who now had to carry not just their own roles, but the weight of what had been left behind. And that kind of pressure changes dynamics. It changes relationships. It changes how decisions are made. Because now it's no longer just about tradition, it's about control, maintaining stability in a situation that no longer feels entirely stable. And this is where the public narrative starts to diverge from reality. On one side, you have the official story, a respectful separation, different paths, mutual understanding. But on the other side, you have the consequences, the silence, the distance, the moments that don't quite add up. Because when a system is disrupted like this, it doesn't just reset, it adapts. And adaptation often comes with tension. Now, let's be clear, this wasn't a single moment that caused everything overnight. It was a turning point, a decision that set a series of changes in motion, changes that are still unfolding. And the longer they unfold, the more visible they become. Because once something like this happens, it creates a ripple effect. Public perception shifts, expectations change, and the relationships within the system begin to evolve, sometimes quietly, sometimes not. And that brings us to something people don't talk about enough: Because while the decision itself was shocking, what followed may have been even more significant: the way it affected the relationship between the brothers. Because for years, the idea of Prince William and Prince Harry standing side by side was central to the image of the royal family. That image mattered, not just emotionally, but symbolically. It represented continuity, stability, the future. And when that image changed, it wasn't just a personal shift, it was a public one, a visible sign that something deeper had been affected. Now, from the outside, it's easy to simplify this, to reduce it to headlines, to opinions, to sides. But the reality is more complex, because what we're seeing isn't just a disagreement, it's the result of a decision that forced the royal family to confront something it rarely faces directly, change that it didn't fully control. And that's what makes this moment so important, because it didn't just divide people, it exposed the limits of the system itself, how much it can adapt, how much it can contain, and what happens when something pushes beyond those limits. But here's the part that really changed everything. It wasn't just the decision to leave, it was what happened between the brothers after. Because what followed wasn't just distance, it was something far more complicated. And in the next video, we're going to break that down, and why it may be the real reason the royal family still hasn't fully recovered. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.